Hi everyone, Julien here, nurse practitioner for Dan Aesthetics Medical, and our clinic is located here in beautiful Ottawa, Ontario. Now I'm known as the dermal fillers guy, so I thought it would be appropriate to make a video clarifying some myths and truths about HA dermal fillers. Specifically, how long do they last and what happens to it as it breaks down? And two, what happens with migration? We know of a certain type of migration, but I guarantee you probably haven't heard of this type of migration that I'm going to clarify in the video. And third, is it safe or recommended for everyone to have HA dermal fillers? I'm going to give you my recommendations, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this video. Let's get right into it. All right, let's get right into it. Question number one, how long do HA fillers really last? And if you've never seen an HA filler, I'm going to give you an example. This is a very thin HA filler that's designed to be placed in the tear troughs. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It should be very thin, almost watery here, and it's still holding its shape. This is basically how it would have come out 4 years ago. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, believe it or not, this filler has been expired for 4 years and it's still holding its shape. How is that possible? Now, ever since I got into medical aesthetics, we've been told that hyaluronic acid dermal fillers should last anywhere from about 1 to 2 years before it's broken down from our own hyaluronic acid enzyme called hyaluronidase. This enzyme breaks down our own hyaluronic acid and should break down our dermal filler hyaluronic acid as well. And by year 2, it should be gone, depending on the brand and also how thick the filler is. Now, in real life scenarios, we now know that from MRIs and ultrasounds that is not the case. However, I still feel that hyaluronic acid dermal fillers are a terrific option for most people, especially if you've never had it before. You just have to do it tastefully, which means not too much, and don't constantly rely on HA dermal fillers to restore lost volume. I think that if you're placing a mild to moderate amount in an area and you do that maybe 1 to 3 times over 3 years, that's perfect. I think that will not only give you immediate satisfaction of lost volume restoration, but it's also going to synthetically hydrate all of your tissues potentially forever, which will look better compared to not ever having any HA dermal fillers at all. The problem lies on constantly relying on HA dermal fillers, being told that these things completely break down after a year, and then revolumizing the whole area with the same amount of products every 6 to 9 to 12 months, and then after that, guess what? Not only does it integrate into the tissues, but there is some of it that remains as a residue. And it looks like almost soft sugar crystals, and they can linger there. They haven't kept their shape. They're now like little individual particles, but they can stay into that superficial fat pad. And we know that from plastic surgeons who have done these facelifts and are noticing that, sometimes they have to actually kind of get rid of these products even though they've been there for multiple years. So keep that into consideration. Remember, when it comes to HA dermal fillers, less is more, and at the same time, it is going to change over time and it's not going to completely go away. That can either be a good thing, or with too much of it, it might be problematic for certain people. The next thing I want to clarify is how HA fillers tend to migrate. We do know that HA fillers will migrate a little bit more in areas where there's a lot of movement, such as the mouth, the lip. If you're placing a lip filler here because of the talking, moving, mastication, kissing, all these things, it will likely move from here to a little further back over time. With a little bit of HA filler, it's not visible, which is not really a big deal, but if you're constantly repeating it with large amounts, then eventually it does become visible, and that's where you get that duck look, and it just looks terrible in my opinion. That can be avoided, by the way. Now let's compare that to the cheeks. Not a very mobile position, and if you're placing dermal filler there, you should be placing most of it into the deep fat pads. It's the first place where you tend to lose volume, and those fat pads are non-mobile. So if you're placing filler there, it should stay. Now, what we do notice, however, is that after it breaks down over a year, that filler will migrate to the surface because it thins out. And I talked to Professor Cotofana about that. I asked him that because one of his papers suggested that thin fillers, if you place them deep, will just migrate to the surface. You need to be placing thicker products into the deep fat pads, otherwise it's going to migrate to the surface. So I asked him, if this product tends to break down over time, will it just migrate to the surface? And he agreed. He said, yes, all HA dermal fillers tend to migrate 3-dimensionally, which means The first dimension is if we place it here and there's movement, it's going to go that way. But the other dimensions are going to be integrating into the tissues and also superficially into the superficial fat pads. Now, is that an issue? Not necessarily if you're using a small amount or if you're not doing this often. However, if you do this too often, as it migrates to the surface, then what will happen is they will look a little puffy, especially when they smile, right? It might look good at rest, but when they smile, if they have those cheeks that are puffed out, it's likely because their filler has migrated from the base to the top. The last question is, do I recommend HA fillers for everyone? And the answer is, it's not a black and white question. It's not an all or nothing. There are definitely groups of people that I don't recommend getting it. First of all, if you have any compromise to your lymphatics, and your lymphatics are basically your channels that collect your dust, debris, bacteria in these lymphatic drainage systems that go to your lymph nodes, and then after that it's drained to the spleen, and this is how this works. If there's an obstruction here, or a compromise, either from, let's say, seasonal allergies, or if you're drinking alcohol the night before or having sodium the night before and you wake up in the morning and you notice some puffiness here, that means you likely have some type of compromise to your lymphatics. For those groups of people, I do not recommend any HA filler around this area. So that includes tear troughs, cheeks, and maybe even the temples for certain groups. So that's it for me, guys. If you're in medical aesthetics and you'd like to take your game to the next level, consider joining my Patreon in the link below. Otherwise, until the next time, take care of yourselves, exercise daily, and please be nice to absolutely everyone. Cheers, guys.